Hi, I'm Stephen Ridgway, and I'm back from my travels, and I also have internet, which is always a good thing if you're trying to do a podcast. So, Apple. As of yesterday, Apple has pushed out another security update as part of their rapid updates, or whatever they call the things these days. They are patching a kernel flaw that affects iOS, iPadOS, and macOS devices. So had a look. Yes, it is definitely out there. If you are using iPhones, you will end up with the update isn't. It's available. It didn't get pushed. I went and pulled it for my machine, on my phone. But yeah, so you will end up with iOS 16.6 if you are on a reasonably up-to-date iPhone. Older versions need to end up with iOS 15.7.8, iPadOS 15.7.08, macOS Ventura 13.5 as well. So stuff to update if you are using Apple tools. Atlassian has released information about some remote code execution bugs that are affecting Confluence and Bamboo. Confluence being the corporate wiki collaboration tooling, and Bamboo being the CI/CD, as in continuous integration, continuous delivery server from Atlassian. Both these vulnerabilities are reasonably serious. They have got patches available though, so if you are using those tools, recommended that you take a look and get them upgraded, patched. Now, as the vulnerabilities do allow for system takeover. AMD processors. AMD, one of the range of AMD processors are Zen 2 processors. Google's security research team has discovered a new vulnerability in impacting AMD Zen 2 CPUs that allows an attacker to steal sensitive data such as passwords and encryption keys and so on at a fairly slow but definitely usable rate of around 30 kilobytes per second from each CPU core. The vulnerability is being tracked as CVE 2023 20593, and it's caused by improper handling of an instruction called, and now don't you just love it when they call these things? VZEROUPPER, Vzrupa. I don't know. I guess if you're in the kernel world, you would know how to. They're all going, no, it's called VZERUPA or VZERUPA or something. I don't know. Anyway, that's the thing. So we've got improper handling of instructions during speculative execution. So it's another one in this arena of, in order to make the CPUs appear faster, they do speculative actions based on some decent guesswork around what the next thing that it's likely to be asked is. So quite a clever idea. However, it is possible to subvert that. So AMD have released patches. So the flaw was made available reported to AMD in May. So the proof of concept is now out because AMD have provided patches for this. The exploit code, the proof of concept's written for Linux, but the bug's OS agnostic. So if you are running any operating system on a Zen 2 AMD processor, you are potentially vulnerable. So it is recommended then that you either apply AMD's new microcode update, or you wait until your computer vendor has incorporated the fix into a future BIOS update. Just as an aside, given the way that this works, it was remarkably difficult to know that you've been compromised with this. The vzrupa, or whatever, vzrupa, doesn't require elevated privileges or special system calls, and so it is intrinsically pretty stealthy. Therefore, recommend you keep on top of your patching. Kernel patches are important. Even though I know that a lot of organizations just sort of shrug their shoulders at them. Don't do it. And then finally from me, any of you who've worked in government or law enforcement or military or emergency services or whatever in the UK and also in Europe and some other countries have undoubtedly come across the Tetra radio comms solution, terrestrial trunked radio, Tetra. It's used by government agencies, law enforcement, and emergency organisations in the UK and in Europe quite extensively. A Dutch team has discovered some vulnerabilities in this particular system, one of which is rather surprising. The first is an Oracle decryption attack that can be used to reveal text, voice, or data communications, and it's made possible by air interface encryption keystream generators' reliance on network time, as in lacking entropy, I'm guessing, or predictable. Predictable keys. And the second is an engineering weakness. The TEA1 encryption algorithm, which is a proprietary encryption algorithm for this particular solution, according to the researchers, has got a backdoor that reduces the original 80-bit key to a size which is trivial to brute force on consumer hardware in minutes. The researchers say it is very clearly an intention, the result of intentional weakening of the cipher. They've looked at the code, and there are steps in the code, the computational steps, which serve no other purpose than to reduce the key's effective entropy. That's a very interesting one, isn't it? So I don't know quite where you take this. Presumably, one would hope that law enforcement agencies will be working with the providers in order to improve this and update the encryption. But I equally know that's going to be very difficult to do at scale over something which is supposed to be a secure system. Because of what's been released, I suspect this means there will now be a great deal of interest in trying to subvert and decode these radio messages. So it is, it's a bad thing that, mainly it's a bad thing it existed in the first place. Secondly, got to ask the question, why are important agencies relying on deliberately broken encryption? There have been cases in the past where encryption has had built-in backdoors, and we know that in the distant past there were actually restrictions on exporting certain sorts of encryption algorithm outside of the US, presumably because the NSA or whoever had difficulty at that time in breaking those things. So, there is a long history of law enforcement in the US insisting on weak encryption for everybody else in the world. Quite how that stacks up these days, I really don't know. And yeah, so we'll have to see. But I just thought that one was particularly interesting. If you work in law enforcement, yeah, be aware. Criminals may be listening to what you're saying now over your radios, or at least if they aren't now, they'll probably be able to download something fairly soon that will let them do it. Anyway, that's enough from me for today. Thank you all for listening, and I'll speak to you again tomorrow morning.